everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino. It is Saturday, July 30th. We are staring right down the barrel of August, and that means summer's coming to a close. Hey, as you know, each week here on Hey Coach Tony, we discuss the hottest topics that affect us as parents and coaches of young athletes, and we open up the studio lines so you can chime in and let us know what you think. The number here in the studio is 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. And for the two or three idiots who emailed me this week, 855 is not one of those exchanges that is going to cost you $2 a minute. 855 is the newest of the toll-free exchanges, so you will not be charged for calling the show, okay? Now listen, there are a few things on the plate for this week. If we have time later in the show, I want to get to this. There was an appeal filed recently in the case of the Patch family versus Louisville Slugger. You may remember some time ago, I highlighted this story when it originally hit the news. Brandon Patch, for those of you who don't remember, is an 18-year-old kid. He was a pitcher on an American Legion baseball team out in Montana, and he was hit in the head by a line drive that was hit off a metal bat. The kid subsequently died. His family, of course, blamed the bat company for this, and so they sued Louisville Slugger and won a verdict for $850,000. Just about 2 weeks ago, the appeal was heard in Superior Court in Montana, but nonetheless, the Supreme Court, in all its intelligence, agreed that Louisville Slugger was indeed at fault and upheld the original verdict. Now, if you ever listen to this show even once, you know how sick it makes me when the bat companies get sued, much less when they lose. But later on in the show, we're going to give you some more details on this case, and you can call in with your own thoughts. But before we do that, I am very proud to say that of all the stories that cross my desk about parents who go nuts and embarrass themselves, I'm always deeply touched when I can literally just roll down my car window and watch it happen in my own backyard. You guessed it. Last week, there was an incident right here in Southwest Connecticut where a controversial call took place at third base. The coach became irate, began swearing at the official, and even his wife from the stands got involved with profanity and rude gestures. Now, thankfully, there was a tournament official on hand to step in and levy the situation and allow cooler heads to prevail. However, when this official did step in, what did he receive for his valiant efforts? A punch in the face and then some. Did I mention that this all happened at a softball game of 10-year-old girls? I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. Anyway, when I first heard about the story, I thought to myself, poor guy. Some local guy volunteering his time, taking his Saturday off from the hardware store, just didn't know how to handle the situation and got involved where maybe he shouldn't have, and look what happened to him. How unfortunate. Well, as usual, I probed in a little bit deeper into this case, and I found that the official in question, or I should say the official administrator in question, is in fact a very experienced man with superb credentials. That's when I knew I had to track this guy down and find out what really happened. So having said that, in just a moment, I'm going to introduce you all to a gentleman named Steve Kolitz. Steve was the umpire coordinator for this tournament that took place in Wilton, Connecticut, not far at all from the studio in which we sit right now. Anyway, before I welcome Steve to the show, I got to let you know his background. I'm going to walk you through his background. He's been a resident of New Milford for the past 24 years, married man of 32 years, active member of the New Milford United Methodist Church. He's got two grown daughters who he coached throughout their childhood in both basketball and soccer. The guy still plays recreational softball in town. As an official, Steve is currently the deputy umpire and chief for the Amateur Softball Association for the state of Connecticut. He umpires baseball and softball from youth level through to adults, including college softball. He referees basketball from youth through high school varsity. He is the rules interpreter for the high school softball board. He's on the boards of several area softball leagues as a chief umpire. He's chief umpire and rules interpreter for several softball tournaments each year. He runs and participates in clinics for officials to step in and improve their skills and mechanics for both rules and the mindset of officiating. He is the assigner of officials for baseball, softball, and basketball throughout southwestern Connecticut, assigning officials for literally about 2,000 contests each year. Now, he also previously coached. He coached youth soccer and basketball and actually assigned referees for the New Milford Soccer Club. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to hear of a better resume, correct? So wouldn't you think that a guy like this might be excused from having to deal with nonsensical, moronic, and violent parents? Well, guess again. We're going to hear Steve's side of this story. Well, you know what? Without any further ado, I want to welcome to the show Steve Kolitz. Steve, good morning and welcome to Hey Coach Tony. How you doing this morning?
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm doing great.
Steve and I have spoken, but we did not meet before this morning. And for those of you who are listening in, you may remember and realize that from time to time, I like to do a segment that I call Ask the Ump or Ask the Official, where you as the listeners and the spectators in the youth sports equation get to call in and ask the tough questions of a very validated official about various situations. Well, today I'm going to try something different. I want to call on all of you officials and umpires and referees out there. I want you guys to get involved in the show today. So throughout the show, if you happen to be a youth sports official, I want you to call in and let us know the things that happen during these youth sports games that drive you nuts. I want to hear what the spectators, the coaches, and the players do that gets under your skin. I want to hear the cliches. You got a funny story, you got a horror story, you got a life lesson, whatever it is, I want to hear from you guys because let's face it, you all never really get a chance to voice your opinions outside the lines. But today, that changes. So we've already opened up the studio lines. The number here is 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Now, how's that for an opportunity of a lifetime for you umpires, all right? It's an open forum for you guys to complain about us, the parents. Talk about shoe being on the other foot. Now, by the way, if you are a parent and you happen to have some questions for Steve, since he's such a highly qualified sports official, I guess we can let you guys call in as well. All right, I'm getting really excited about this. So while we're waiting for your calls, Steve, do us all a favor. I only hit the highlights of this story. Why don't you walk us through the situation that occurred last Sunday, and I'm going to interrupt you here or there with a question, if I may.
Well, Tony, let me just correct one quick thing you said already. We don't, as umpires and officials, we didn't volunteer for these tournaments. We do get paid.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, originally my thought was, okay, volunteer guy got popped in the face, because that's usually what happens.
Right. The situation was this. It was a greatly played game. I mean, the teams were battling back and forth. Score was going back and forth. One team's leading, the other team's leading. I'm in the sidelines, watching the games. So there were two games, semifinal games going on at the same time. My role as rules interpreter and umpire-in-chief for the tournament was to oversee it. If a rules question came up, a protest, we correct it right then and there so that the game can continue. It's not like a regular league game where we can come back a week later and do it. We need to have a champion at the end of the day.
Sure.
The situation was getting a little heated. There was some frustration in the coaching, in the one of the coaching dugouts, and before the game, I went in and introduced myself to both coaches, both teams, and gave them an umpire evaluation form. One of the ways that I'm trying to collect information to review with my umpires and improve their skills. Mm-hmm. During the game, one of the points where the coach was a bit frustrated, I even, in fact, saw him storming out of the dugout with the form in his hand, scribbling some notes, and back into the dugout. Came out one time, throwing his hat, saying something about the umpiring, and
wait, he stepped out of the dugout and threw his hat
on the outside fan side. Of
I got you. Stepped out of the. I got you. Okay.
Not in the field. So the umpires probably. Well, one of them did say he saw that, but I had no idea if it was frustration at his teammate, players, or umping or what.
Yep.
Then there was a play at third base. Girl slid in. The defensive player covering third base dropped the glove down on her, tagged her, but it looked like she was fishing for the ball. Mm-hmm. Umpire, who was a guy that does college ball with me, so certainly qualified to do a 10-year-old game. And he came in and made the appropriate call, in my opinion. I was watching the play as well, and calls her safe. The coach made some sorts of comments, asked the two umpires to get together, and which is protocol. I mean, certainly in a semifinal game.
So far, nothing wrong.
Right. The two umpires get together, they talk, they come out saying the exact same thing. The calling official comes back out, confirms the call is safe. The parents make some sorts of comments. The coach makes some sorts of comments. I didn't hear what it was. The next thing I know, I hear that there's ejections. But I've heard through hearsay that some of what was said was, oh, you even get together and can't get the call right. Can you now at least try to improve your balls and strikes? I don't know that that's true. I'm not going to say for sure, but it's hearsay and what I've heard. And so the next thing I'm seeing, I'm moving a little closer to the field. I'm probably still well beyond third base, outside the field parameters, outside the out-of-play lines, beyond even where the parents are sitting. The wife who'd been ejected is now, I don't know, she's 10, 15 yards from me, sort of heading away from the field because she's been ejected, turns around, makes some more comments, turns back around, takes a few more steps, turns back to the field, makes some more comments. I look at her and say, lady, you just need to go away. So, the kids need to play here. I got berated with some colorful language.
Okay.
And I said, lady, you just got to go. Some more stereo of the hand signals. And she finally leaves the confines of the field where we can't see or hear her. I turn back towards the field to find this guy right in my face. Mm-hmm. Out of a reaction, I put my hands up. Could I have pushed him slightly? It was one of these startled, whoa, where'd this guy come from? And that's when he clocked me. I proceeded to just kind of look at him in shock that, this had happened.
Well, by the way, I'm going to interrupt you because what you guys, especially on YouTube, you get to see my pretty face. You don't see Steve. Steve is not exactly the tiniest little guy you ever want to see. He's actually a very imposing character. So I got to tell you, I give this guy credit for taking a swing at you. Because if I came across you, I don't know if my first impulse would be to take a swing at you. Because apparently he hit you.
Yes.
And apparently you stood there and said, gee, what the hell's going on? And you didn't go down. So I wonder if this guy was wondering if there was some trouble about to happen.
Well, he's a little bigger than I am, I think, too. But that's academic. I turned to the to the table, registration table, who had seen this going on. At least some of them have. There were, like I say, 2 games going on. So and I told him to call the police. And he packed up his stuff and was gone certainly before the police got there. But he's on the official rosters, and they certainly know the names. And finding him wasn't, from what I understand, not too hard to do.
No, of course not. And listen, this is a very interesting story, and I got a ton of questions, and I'm sure there are other people who have a ton of questions as well. We are going to go to a quick break before we continue, but I got to tell you, folks, before we go to break, by the way, we're here with Steve Kolitz, who's kind of recanting this ridiculous story from I guess it was last Sunday, where a coach lost his mind and just completely went bonkers at a 10-year-old girl's softball game. When we come back, we're going to take your calls for Steve, and we'll have questions for him, but we're also going to go through this whole idea of the Ask the Ump, and we're going to pick Steve's brain a little bit about the things that we do as spectators and parents to drive the officials nuts. But before we go to break, I want to ask you, is your son a top-notch baseball player between the ages of 13 and 18? If so, and your kid has what it takes to compete at the highest levels, then you should mark your calendars for August 13th and 14th. Team New York Baseball is holding our tryouts for the upcoming fall season at Pace University in Pleasantville, New York. That's right. We at Team New York Baseball are looking for the top talent in the tri-state area to round out the rosters of each of our teams in each of our age groups. You can pre-register your child at our website, which is www.teamnybaseball.org. As we get closer, there will be more details about the event. So again, that website is www.teamnybaseball.org. Be sure to use the www because it won't work without it. So treat your young ball player to the experience of a lifetime playing for Team New York. Each August, we have a special showcase where our players are handpicked to basically be put on display for the top college and pro scouts in the Northeast. Don't miss this opportunity to give your young ball player a real leg up in their baseball career. The website one last time is www.teamnybaseball.org. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Stick around.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio this fine Saturday morning. This morning in studio, I'm joined by Steve Kolitz, who is youth official extraordinaire. The guy is really just got one of the most impressive resumes that you'll ever see, and he and I are having a lot of fun talking during the break about all kinds of stuff, but I don't want to hog it. So we are going to get to your calls and to your emails. Steve was involved in this fracas at a 10-year-old girls softball game. And I got an email during the week from Todd and Darian, who asked a good question. And I don't know if you even have this information, but I was going to ask the same question. Todd from Darien writes in and says, "Hey, Coach Tony, I'm wondering if the coach's daughter was at all involved in this play at third base. How else could a play in a girls' softball game of 10-year-olds get that out of control?" Now, I don't know if you have an answer for that one, but was the coach's daughter, because, again, the wife got involved too. So that was the first thing that went through my mind. Do you happen to know if their daughter was involved in this play? Was she the third baseman who was bobbling the ball?
I have no idea.
Damn it.
The only thing I can say about the daughter is one of the comments that went back and forth on one of the news stations that carried it was somebody had said that they were with the daughter for some period of time after the game and saying she was, I mean, all the girls were on the field crying the whole 9 yards over this whole situation. I mean, picture 10-year-olds and your daddy's punching somebody. And he's a coach, so he knows all these people. And they said that she was physically shaking for at least a half an hour after the situation.
Well, I shouldn't say as good fortune would have it, but as a lot of you know, my youngest daughter is 10 years old, and she is a softball player. And she happens to be a very good softball player. Matter of fact, I think they're playing their last game today or tomorrow. We're having the big, hey, for all the Somers parents out there, we're doing the Somers parents tailgate tonight at Reese Park. So come on and grab yourself a wine cooler if you like. But I personally can't imagine. When I keep looking back at the story, and I take it away from irate parent coach and umpire who's getting berated and third-party administrator who steps in, I keep saying the same thing to myself. What could possibly happen at a softball game of 10-year-old girls that would warrant this type of reaction? I mean, granted, the spectator in the stands that got out of line was the coach's wife, but I got to tell you, when I coach, I have a simple rule for my players and for my parents, and I simply tell them this: you will not ever address an official. You just will not. Now, are you going to get the groans from the stands? Are you going to get people complaining about calls? Sure. If one of my parents was ever ejected from a game, and by the way, Team New York parents, if you're listening, write this down. If you ever get ejected from one of my games, you will not be welcome. There will be a restraining order, that a self-imposed restraining order where you will not be allowed to be anywhere within 50 yards of a ball field. Because
absolutely.
Well, what that mom did without knowing it, idiot. And you know what? I tell you what. I'm going to spring the names on these people later and call them out. But forget what the coach did, because that's inexcusable. What the mom did, and again, if you want to give me your opinion on this, it's 855-HEY-COACH. The mom embarrassed herself. She embarrassed her kid more than she will ever know.
The program,
the parents that were sitting around her, the guy selling the hot dogs. Anybody who could hear and or see what was going on was made to feel uncomfortable because of the actions of this woman, period. And I don't think parents get that.
Well, one of the things to remember, I mean, some of the newspaper articles and such were written a little, there was no pushing, there was no escorting on my part. Which the paper said.
Okay, because the paper did say you escorted her off the field, and again, being the guy who looks for a little bit of rub, I'm wondering if this woman had to be kind of physically removed, like gently carried off the field. And now looking at the size of you probably could have carried her over your shoulder without a lot of trouble.
Wouldn't have been hard. Other than the kicking and screaming. But the situation is this. I mean, we train our officials to hold head coaches accountable. So if there is an issue, you go straight to the head coach. We want to hear from the head coach. We tell them that anybody else on the field that is out of line, we're going to hold you accountable. We're going to go to you to control it. In this case, it didn't work. He was not the head coach. I don't know. Again, I wasn't the umpire in the field, so I don't know some of the situation that transpired with that. But it just goes nuts. I mean, we've had parents that yell at us in the stands, and we take a lot. We'll allow a quick bark. The closer the play, the more potential that we were wrong. From a coach, from a parent, from the groans, the whatever, we allow it. You just don't insult us. don't throw magic words at us.
Magic words? I've never heard it used that way. That's a good one.
Don't insult our familyhood. It's a pretty simple concept.
Listen, this is good stuff, and I got to tell you, the phone lines are starting to go here. So I believe we have, the name is too common, but we're going to go to John, who is calling in. Hey, John, you're on Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Coach Tony. How are you?
All right, so this is. I was talking to Steve during the break. I said my brother John calls in occasionally when he gets worked up. This is indeed, I know the voice. It's my brother John. John, did you hear about this? Did you hear about this story?
Yeah, I read it in the paper, I think, about 2 days ago, and I said to myself, this is right up your alley on this one, because you know what?
John, is he one of these guys that does that to us?
Himself, saying that he felt his wife was threatened in some way, or he.
Stop it! Wait a second. You're telling me there's a follow-up article where this guy said he thought his wife was threatened?
No, I didn't see that part, but I would take it if he's going to come up with some kind of an excuse, because in reality, there is no excuse in mankind's history for in a 10-year-old game for a coach to assault an umpire in any way.
John, can I interrupt you?
You know what,
John? Can you hear me, John? John, hang on a quick second. Hang on. Steve wants to ask you a question.
Let me just interrupt by saying, remember two things. The gentleman
Coach
said...
Tony, I'm sorry. It's really, really low. It's really hard to hear.
All right, John, one of the things that was said by the party that hit me was that he didn't know who I was. Before the game, I introduced myself in the same attire that I was wearing in between games, that I introduced myself and was wearing. Yes, I was wearing a large... hat that was protecting my face from the sun because my doctor likes it when I do that. But I introduced myself, gave him the form. He, in fact, filled out the form, made statements to the umpire, something to the effect of that he was thrilled that his supervisor was there.
There's absolutely no excuse whatsoever.
No, and I'm going to answer that question. There is no excuse. But I mean, the only excuse this pathetic loser, and now I'm going to say the name because I'm getting a little bit pissed off. This is Terry Deenan, 38-year-old dad from... I'm not going to give his address, even though it's public knowledge, New Canaan, Connecticut, and his wife, Andrea. Terry Deenan was introduced to my buddy here, Steve, before the game, introduced to him as the administrator of the officials, the umpire coordinator. He handed him the cards that said, you may evaluate our umpires, which, by the way, not enough guys do. Good for you. But the point is, there was no excuse for this, John. Zero.
But it was a big game.
Well, I thought 10-year-old semifinal, 10-year-old softball.
You will learn, Steve, that my brother is loaded with sarcasm, and he was just trying to make a point. You're right, John. There was no excuse about this at all. So Terry Deenan, you know what? You want to call in, great. But first things first, keep that dog on a leash. If my wife opened her hole at a kid's game, I would be the first one jumping down her throat, not defending her.
Well, let me say something else. One of the things I also train my officials to when they get on a field, remember that every game is that person's, whether it's a 10-year-old or an adult league, it's their World Series.
Yep.
They deserve to have us work as hard as we can to officiate that game to the best of our ability.
But the officials deserve common courtesy. Don't go out of your way to be super kind, because nobody does that.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I got to ask you this. Did I read correctly, and this is where I got to check, did I read correctly that either this guy, Terry Deenan, or his wife spit on you before you got hit?
Well, he was so close to me that at his, as worked up as he was, it wasn't cough one up and spit it at me, but it was, I was getting sprayed with his,
the cower shower. Okay, I got you.
As he was yelling at me.
All right, well, that's, by the way, that's unfortunate, but whoever, and again, the guy who wrote this article, it seems to have taken some liberties, but John, is your question, is there a way this guy's going to defend his actions?
No, I'm telling you now. The guy's he's gonna get a lawyer. He's gonna do something. He's gonna find a way to try to say, "Hey, I'm not a bad guy. This was just a big misunderstanding. I usually just take swings at people in the stands."
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, I didn't know who he was. I would have punched him if I wouldn't have punched him if I knew he was the umpire coordinator. But if he was just some dad, it's okay.
So I had to take a swing at him to defend my wife's honor. But now, what I'm telling you is, most coaches, myself, I do it. I tell every parent, do not do anything with the umpire. Do not, unless you're asking him what time it is, or a great call, or
and
good
hopefully
job
my guy
today.
doesn't have his watch.
Do not interact with the umpire in any way. That is the coach's job. Let the coach deal with it. And I also tell the umpire, listen, if any parent gives you a problem, come to me Point them out, and I will take care of it.
Yeah, because you know what?
Let them get involved in anything going on during the game.
Nothing works better than stopping the game.
All you're doing is looking for problems.
Yeah, nothing works better, and I will not do this to a kid, but I will do this to a parent. Nothing works better than stopping the game and pointing out so everybody knows, hey, Mr. Kolitz, do me a favor, stop addressing the umpire. I had a guy do it. I had a high school basketball coach call timeout during a game and actually blame the wasted timeout on the parent that he actually had he did the same thing. He said, tell me if one of my parents is out of line. And he called timeout and said, Mr. Kolitz, first of all, thank you because I know how to waste a timeout to do this. But as we've talked about, you cannot address the official. Please stop. And then they just continue the game, and that was the end of that.
I had a basketball game one time that I couldn't tell for sure what parent it was, but I knew within 3 or 4 of who it was. And I was about to hand the ball back into the thrower in. And as I was turning to hand the ball into him, out of the crowd comes this, nice call, homie! And I proceeded to pull the ball back, look over in that direction, and said, quit embarrassing your children.
There you go.
That's one of my statements that I make to parents and even coaches that, try to, and usually it puts it back in perspective to them.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, see, we got to go to break. John, thanks for the call. Hey, listen,
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Having a hell of a show this morning. Hey, Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Joined by Steve Kolitz, who was involved in an unfortunate situation at a 10-year-old girls' softball game. My brother John just called in to chime in and give me some garbage about how I'm handling the show, as always. But in any event, I think we're doing okay.
It's funny you did the same thing that I've been doing since, is just shaking my head whenever I think about it. It's like, how did this happen? Huh?
Yeah, well, that's what I always
why?
do. But I'll say this over and over again. Thank God for idiots like the Deanans. Terry and Andrew
Dean.
About, huh? Hey, otherwise I'd be out of work. How much fun is it to talk about stuff that doesn't stir it up? But I do want to ask you one thing. How do I say this without... Why didn't you file assault charges? The guy punched you in the face, and granted, it didn't hurt, and you're not a wuss for filing charges, but why didn't you file assault charges? I always rip into guys, especially in youth sports, for the ridiculous lawsuits that are brought about in youth sports. But you know what? You have a legitimate beef. Why didn't you press charges?
Well... I'm not that kind of person. It's one of those things where I haven't lost any work. I umpired the next game. I was supposed to do behind the plate. I did not do that in case my jaw was... Ended up going to the doctor the next day, and if it went to court saying, Steve, did you umpire the very next game behind the plate? Yes. Did you get hit in the mask a couple of times? I did take that out of the equation. I have since worked behind the plate and all that. I didn't lose any work. I don't have any physical damage. I bought a new truck that the guy could gladly pay for if he wants to. But I'm just not that kind of person.
Yeah, all right. Well, the reason I ask is when I first heard that you did not press charges, I felt...
I don't know that my statute of limitations is over yet.
It's not. It's not. And I've become basically a lawyer as my second job just from doing the show. But I really feel, and it's not you personally, and it's not about whether you lost work, and it's not about if you're that type of guy. I think you let these people off the hook a little bit. I believe the only way to really make this stuff stop is to throw the book at the offenders. But if there are no laws in place, and I don't believe there are, like in Florida, if you make any physical contact with a youth sports official, it is a felony.
Well, and they've tried to do that in this state and several others. I'm not well versed in it. My opinion, or one of the things that I think I've heard on this subject, is that it has not passed in this state because the politicians add some riders to the bill, and the people voting then say, well, with this rider on it, I don't like it. And so it keeps right. I mean, assault is assault, battery is battery. It happened, and it does happen. But in this case, I also think, they were charged with breach of peace. I don't know if it could get escalated. It's possible, I guess. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police officer. I'm not any of those things. I just go out on the field and try to umpire a game and call balls and strikes and safe and out.
and that's noble. And I got to tell you, part of me certainly respects you. And this is, like I said, not a reflection on you as an individual about whether or not you're going to sue. But my point is, I think there's a lack of recourse. And I mean at the highest and most intricate levels. I mean, if the guy sneezed on me the wrong way, part of me would say, sue him, not because you're going to get a big payday out of it, but somebody's got to send a message firmly and once and for all that you cannot make physical threats and or attacks on youth sports officials. You can't.
Well, and Tony, that's why I'm doing this show with you. That's why I pulled a couple strings to get the article in the newspaper. That's why when the TV station came and wanted to do a piece, I said, I welcome it. Mm-hmm. We need to get this point across, that this stuff cannot and will not be tolerated. One of the directors of one of the local town leagues that I assigned came out yesterday when I was umpiring here in Brookfield, and physically came only to tell me that he supports what I'm doing, and made a statement that was interesting. He said, it's probably, if this was going to happen, of the people that he knows, of the people that I assign, and you know, because we've gotten to know each other through conversations and umpiring games and seeing them at tournaments and so on and so forth. He said, if this was going to happen to somebody, it's probably best that it happened to you because you're the best equipped to do. I mean, I take that flattery and I'm fine with that. I hope to say that many of my guys would be as equipped to deal with it as well, meaning turn away, get the proper authorities involved, and not retaliate, not punch the guy, try to, or anything else.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because something similar happened, and for those of you who listen religiously, you'll know the story I'm talking about. My daughter, when she was 9 years old, she plays on a very competitive travel soccer team. And again, you would think a guy like me doing what I do, you'd be immune from having to deal with the moron parents. But my daughter was playing a very competitive game. The other parents, and I have a pretty loud and bordering on obnoxious group of parents on this group of 9-year-old girls. The other
been there, done that.
Yeah, well, the other team's parents were, you know what? Before I get to my story, I know we got calls here. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We got Chris who's calling in, and we're gonna go to Chris. Hey, Chris, you're on Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. How you doing this morning?
Good, thanks. I just wanted to say one thing in my experience as an official. I actually happen to be one of Steve's officials.
Hi, Chris.
For some reason, the younger kids are where the coaches are the hottest, and I have not figured that one out. As the kids get older, 13, 14, 15, 16, doing those games for some reason, the coaches you never have a problem with. It's always the 8, 9, 10, maybe 11.
Well, we had a situation in a 15-year-old baseball game a couple weeks ago.
By the way, Chris, you want an answer to that question? Because I have a pretty good theory. No one's ever asked me that, and I'm glad that you bring it up. Chris is basically saying that the problem parents and the problem coaches tend to be more prevalent at the younger age groups. Well, Chris, there's an interesting statistic that those of us in the sports parenting world know very well. Of all the kids, and there are 30 million of them or so that participate in organized sports in America, by the age 13, more than 2/3 of them will quit. And I have a theory that part of the reason they quit is because it's no longer fun. And why do you think it's no longer fun? Because idiot parents like us and idiot coaches like us ruin it for those kids.
Not to mention girlfriends.
Absolutely.
Well, girlfriends and PlayStation, all that other nonsense. But I would venture a guess that a lot of those people are, I guess, weeded out of the gene pool because they've screwed it up for their kids. But you're certainly correct. And I think the more meaningless the games are, the more these parents and coaches have something to prove.
These things are more about, you know, I coached my son for many years before I started officiating, and no matter how important the game was, 5 minutes after that game, those kids could give a crap less about the game. It's more the coaches that were pissed and the parents that were pissed. The kids are running the ice cream truck no matter what age they are.
One of my daughters, the highlight of the soccer game was
5 minutes after that game's over, they don't care whether they win or lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the highlight my daughter had in playing soccer for the 1 year she played soccer, the one who focused more on basketball, was the snack at the end of the game.
That's all I'm telling you, until age 11, that is all they care about. And no matter how bad the loss is, no matter how well or badly they played, kids and their resiliency is off the charts. We as parents and coaches are the ones that hang on to it and harbor it, and we're the ones that want to talk about it in the car on the way home. The kids could care less. By the time that car door shuts, they really could care less.
I had a kid, I run the Brookfield Park and Rec basketball program as well. Just add it to the list.
Forgot to put that in your resume.
And one of the kids came out of the game, couldn't even sit on the bench before first going to his backpack and getting his little Game Boy or whatever it was, and sat on the bench playing this Game Boy. I almost went up behind him and took it. You know?
Hey, Chris, by the way, thanks for calling in, man. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope we hear from you soon.
All right, thanks.
All righty. But you know what? That's a great point. These kids, they're just so they take it to heart. A lot of them really do take it to heart. And I've seen the kid with the worst, I don't want to say attitude, but some kids are hard on themselves. And I've seen the worst kid being so hard on him or herself for a mistake they made or a game that they lost or a play that was booted. And as hard as they are on themselves, I think, oh boy, I better go talk to this kid after the game and straighten him or her out and make sure they know it's okay. But I'm telling you, by the next inning, by the next quarter, they really, it's water off a duck's back. They really are great like that, and we should, as parents and coaches, should allow them to let it go.
Well, let's look at it this way. I mean, this situation that came up, kids are resilient. Mm-hmm. Kids playing in that game will have forgotten that game or that championship within the next few hours. Yeah. Oh, okay, I won a trophy. Woo, good deal. Do you think they're still talking about when...
That is going to be etched. And by the way, the one who suffers the most is the daughter of those two idiots, the Deanans, because that girl is going to remember forever that mom was a moron and dad got into a fight at my 10-year-old softball game. Listen, we're going to have to go to another break here. But before we do, I got to tell you, Steve, you've been a great guest. I'm having a ball here with you. You listeners at home, you think you got what it takes to go toe-to-toe with me here in the studio. If you know a great coach or an administrator who might be a good guest on the show, let me know. You're not going to be as good as Steve here, but let's face it, who possibly could be as good as Steve? But if you know a great coach or administrator or umpire, email me at heycoachtony@gmail.com or call me on the Hey Coach Tony hotline after the show at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. If I pick you to be on the show, you're going to get this. It is a Hey Coach Tony T-shirt, or you might get the Hey Coach Tony coffee mug like the one I normally have here. I think people are just screwing with me now because every week somebody takes my Hey Coach Tony coffee mug. Just let me know you like it. I'll give you one. But here's your T-shirt, man.
Thanks a lot.
The shirt is courtesy of Signature Marketing in Connecticut. Call my friend Jennifer Holguin at Signature Marketing. It's 203-232-0868. She'll help you design the perfect promotional products for your company or organization. Again, the number is 203-232-0868, or visit them on the web at signaturemarketing.com. And remember, if you know someone who'd be a great guest on the show, shoot me a note at heycoachtony@gmail.com or call me at 855-HEY-COACH. I know we got some of you guys on the lines, and we're going to get to your calls as soon as we get back from break, but I got to get to break, folks. This is Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Apparently, I either said some things to rub some folks the wrong way, or some of you knuckleheads finally woke up because the phone lines are actually lighting up. So we're going to get right back into it. We're going to try to go to line 2, where I believe we have Kurt on hold. Hey, Kurt, you're on Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. How you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm doing good, thanks. I just wanted to say I'm an umpire, fairly new. Steve taught me the game. Thanks, Steve. And
how you doing, Kurt?
Good. You know, my biggest thing that I find is that there are the rules. They may not be perfect of the game, but they're designed to, you know, keep the game fair. And it just kind of makes it hard on the umpires when you have outside influences, whether they're from the players or the coaches or even the parents, you know, teaching the kids or encouraging them to do things that aren't really within the realm of the sportsmanship of the game. And it makes it difficult for an umpire, especially when they're on the field by themselves, to, you know, not only enjoy the game, but make it enjoyable for everybody else.
Well, again, what I always say, the best umpires are the guys you don't notice during the games. If you are a noticed umpire, and this is on the other side, and I won't even get to this because we're not going to have enough time to do it, but Steve will certainly be back on the show. There are umpires who like to make their presence known. And to those guys, I got to tell you, make your presence known to the coaches before the game, and then make your presence known to the coaches after the game. If you are not noticed between those two periods of time, you will be one of the better umpires by far. No question about it. Hey, that's a great point. Certainly appreciate the call there, Kurt.
And one of the big things he said is that, you know, remember, in many of the games, especially a newer umpire, is doing a game, he's nervous, and he's doing the game by himself. Basketball harder than softball.
Yep.
In basketball, you got, you know, 2 people or 3 people. So that's 4 or 6 eyes watching 10 bodies, 20 arms, 20 legs, and listening to everybody. And if you watch where the ball is, you're going to have a terrible bloodbath.
Sure.
In baseball, softball, if every umpire in the field watches where the ball is, not much else is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've only had, one or two situations where I wish that we had looked someplace else, but the dictation of the play, both umpires had to look in the same place. The ball was almost foul line, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and that is kind of rare, because there are times when I've caught a home plate umpire watching the ball being caught in left field instead of watching whether or not somebody's tagging up. And those are the blunders that I will. And again, I'm a coach first, parent second. I'll point those out.
We're supposed to have good peripheral vision. Too.
Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to have good vision in general, but that's to be debated. All right, listen, all right. You know what? I want to go to line 3. I think we got Dave waiting on line 3. Hey, Dave, you're on Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. How you doing this morning?
How are you, Coach Tony?
I'm great, man. What do you got to say?
How's my buddy Steve's jaw doing?
Steve's jaw?
Fine.
Like I said, I don't know how big you guys are, but he's a big boy.
I had one of somebody called me the other night, one of my officials, and
I couldn't, when you sent the article to me, I couldn't believe that you were the guy who got clocked, because I've never really seen Steve get mad.
Yeah, well, he didn't apparently do much to get hit. He just walked up and helped the lady off the field, and then
I didn't even help her. I directed her from a distance.
That's right. I forgot. The person who wrote the article screwed that part up. Yeah. So he directed a woman off the field, and her husband steps in, sticks out his chest feathers, and decides to clock Steve. But what do you got to say about this whole scenario here?
Oh, it's terrible. I think he should be banned not only from coaching, but also from watching his daughter ever play softball.
Well, I don't know about ever, but I would certainly throw a year ban on this guy. So if the knuckleheads in Ridgefield or Wilton did the tournament, if you're listening, I would, if I directed tournaments, I would have a black book.
He has certainly been taken off of the Ridgefield coaching staff already. Beyond that, I don't know. The ream of paper that I filled out in reports for this thing for the different organizations, one of them asked what would be my resolution that I'd want out of this. And Dave's absolutely right. One of the things I said was that he should be banned from coaching any youth sports. He should not be able to
I've been umpiring for 30-plus years, and we say I've only thrown one coach out.
You've only thrown... Again, that means
Where you been, Dave?
Exactly. Either you're totally indifferent, either you're completely indifferent and not doing your job, or you're doing your job really well, keeping order during the game. And I'm joking with you because I assume somebody doing it 30 years, you're throwing one coach out of the game. And by the way, I apologize. I didn't mean what I said that day. But the idea is, it means you're doing your job the right way. You're one of those guys who's not noticed, and I say that tongue-in-cheek because guess what? You are noticed. You're noticed by the coaches who truly, truly appreciate good officials. Dave, listen, great call. I appreciate it, man. I hope you're enjoying the show and you call back in soon.
One of the important things about that being noticed, we talk about uniforms. It's important to come out with a clean, pressed, proper uniform because it's that first impression. It's so important. If I come out there looking sloppy, I'm going to be a perception of being sloppy, and I'm going to get taken advantage of.
Or showing up late.
And exactly. Being in the right place is the next thing. Being, improving your angles and so on. But that's all mechanics. I mean, that. Well, again,
as you do older games, you've done some college stuff. One of the biggest beefs that we as coaches have is we know you're going to blow calls, but if I see someone blow a call at, like, example, if there's a runner on first and there's a base hit into the gap, the first base umpire will go to second,
right,
and the home plate umpire will typically go by third. If you blow the call at third and you're doing it from behind the plate, you're going to hear it from me. If you blow the call and you're there, and all you got to say is, Tony, I was closer than you were, and I'm going to shut my mouth.
Yeah, I had a great angle. We've had guys that went out that called balls and strikes, and the umpire, a coach is screaming about balls and strike calls, or a parent. We've walked out to where they're sitting and said, okay, go ahead and start pitching.
Well, good for you. Now, again, you'll get more punches in the jaw that way. But
I haven't done it, but
it's a cute way to get your point across. All right, listen, I believe we got Frank, who is now on the line on hold. Hey, Frank, you're on Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. How you doing, Steve? How are you?
Frank, how are you? I'm great.
All right. I've known Steve for a while. I'm a high school softball coach. He probably knows who it is.
Absolutely. And I got a great story to tell you because we had a repeat of your situation.
Well, let me just say one thing. Something that people don't realize, it's only a game. And I stress that with my high school parents and even with my kids. It's a game that's played between the lines, and it's done that way. You get kids that are coached by people that really are not coachable or know how to coach. Parents that coach young kids, you have to go to clinics just as umpires have. Now, I have umpired in the past, so I'm on both sides of the fence here. I've made bad calls as an umpire,
And a coach.
Definitely made bad calls coaching. All right? And that's what people don't realize, you know. Yes, an umpire is not going to make every call 100% correct, but you are not, as a coach, going to do the same thing. And the way to deal with an umpire, and Steve will attest to this, is you go out there man-to-man as a gentleman. I mean, in this case, if it's a woman, you know, be reasonable. Don't go out there screaming, making an ass of yourself, excuse my language.
No, I think you nailed it. She made an ass of herself.
Well, and Frank, how many times in our pregame meetings have I ended it or in the statement said, you know, anything else that comes up, we're going to talk rather than scream?
Yeah, because there's nothing worse. You know what, Frank? Nothing worse than being that. I equate it to being the guy during a bar fight that stays on the outside and throws a bottle in the middle. That's an easy to yell something like, you must have been the lookout at Pearl Harbor, or you know, something like that to the umpire. That's cheesy garbage that's going to get a negative reaction. You know, you don't want to take too much time out of the game, but if it's something about where the umpire was positioned or a question about a rule, I'll call timeout and I'll call Steve over and say, hey, just help me here, but isn't this, and this the way it's supposed to go? Or, gee, shouldn't you have been in a better spot for that? And Steve will typically say, you know what? Yep.
But our rule books also say, in our mechanic books, yes, there's a place we're supposed to be, or in a place you deem better to see the play.
Yeah, and listen, I look at that as the cop-out rule, but that's true.
As a coach looking at umpires, you don't watch their position all the time because you're watching the play develop.
Well, I do it a lot because I got to tell you.
If you have 5 or 4 coaches on the staff with you, everybody can watch certain scenarios. But if you're 1 or 2 people, you're trying to watch a play develop, yeah, you might miss where an umpire is positioned. And as they are not positioned in the right spot, they'll miss a call.
It's going to happen. And we know, by the way, if I'm going to say one thing.
In the Major League.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to say one thing. And by the way, yes, as we know, my buddy Pedro Alvarez, who, by the way, played for Team New York, when he gunned that guy at the plate the other night and that call was just botched, it does happen. And that guy was in good position, too. So if you take one thing from the show, parents and coaches and players, if you expect an umpire to never blow a call, you're going to have an ulcer. And that's all there is to it. Hey, Frank, listen, great call, man. Keep up the good work. I hope you enjoy the show and we hear from you soon.
See you soon, Frank.
All right, Steve, we'll see you next year.
Yep.
See you next year. Wow, that's
nice. You're coming back. Glad to hear
it. I'm back.
All right, man. Thanks for the call. See, and this is the stuff that I'm talking about. You know, the youth sports equation is, you know, I always call it a triangle where it's parents, coaches, and kids, and that is primarily the case. But you know, you make it a square when you throw the officials into this mix. And I think what's happening is this sense of entitlement that we all have as parents, especially, you know, you talk about Ridgefield, Connecticut. Not a lot of inner city crime in Ridgefield, Connecticut. It's a pretty affluent neighborhood, and idiots like these, you know, the Deanans, and I'm going to keep
remember
they
were from New
Canaan, which is even better.
And somebody had said, why were they playing in Ridgefield? New Canaan doesn't have a 10-year-old team, so they moved up to Ridgefield.
And that's fine. But the point is the sense of entitlement, the sense of I have to control everything because I'm Joe Stockbroker or Joe Attorney. Do yourself a favor. If you're a parent and you have this sense of entitlement, get your butt a lawn chair. And I say a lawn chair, not so you can sit closer to the games, but so that you can sit further away from the games. Because, unless Steve can correct me here, nothing good ever comes out of parents, outside of parent coaches, getting involved directly in a game in any way, shape, or form. You think you're advocating for your kid? You know, you're embarrassing your kid.
Absolutely. I've seen more tears on sidelines from kids.
You said it perfectly, Steve. That little girl, that poor little 10-year-old girl, and I'm not going to use her name, but her last name is Deanan, that kid is going to have a scar.
Absolutely.
Because
can you imagine going back to school in a couple weeks?
The girls that are going to forget about school in a couple weeks. Let's say they have another game or two. Which I'm sure they do, maybe.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But the point is, okay, so what's next? Soccer in the fall. They're going to start working out soon. School's come. Like I said, it's August as of, you know, tomorrow. Those kids are going to be affected by that. So if you're an idiot parent like the Deanans in New Canaan, Connecticut, and I'm telling you, look it up. You can find their address. Go egg their house. These people make me sick.
Don't do that. I didn't say it.
You didn't say it. I did.
That.
I did. Hey, listen, Steve, excellent job, man. I really enjoyed having you on the show. This was another really quick hour of my life gone by. But, folks, listen, keep the emails, the phone calls, the texts. Keep them coming, man. You guys make the show great, not me. And I look forward to seeing you every Saturday at 9 a.m. on ESPN Radio. This is Hey Coach Tony. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.